We are going live in 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to this year's edition of the Autocar Professional Road Safety Conclave, brought to you in association with Continental and ATS. Now, road safety, as you know, is a topic of a big concern in India, where despite massive ongoing improvements in road infrastructure, the number of accidents continues to rise. In fact, in 2021, over 4 lakh accidents that claimed more than 150,000 lives were reported on Indian roads. What's worrying is that the death rate grew by 16% compared to the previous year. Okay, we know that was a COVID year and there was a lot of lockdown, but still the accident rate is on the rise. And that's the whole point. The number of fatalities and total accidents has been rising steadily over the last 5 years. Now, these are the statistics that's come from our Ministry of Road Transport and Highways' latest annual report, which also suggests that the worst affected fall in the 18 to 45-year age bracket. So clearly, there's a lot related to driving behavior and how seriously we take our traffic laws. So while the government has taken some serious regulatory measures in the recent past by mandating technologies like dual airbags, ABS, the issue is that speeding, use of mobile phones while driving on the wrong side, drunken driving, they still remain some of the key reasons or habits that claim lives on Indian roads every year. Now, over the next 2 days of this webinar, we have a series of discussions lined up with the industry experts to talk about some of the key challenges on Indian roads and how safety can be elevated with the combined efforts of the automobile OEMs, independent organizations, governments, as well as the end user. So I'd like to thank you all for joining in. We will begin our first session, which is the keynote address with a very special speaker. I'd like to invite Mr. Thomas Broberg, who's the Senior Technical Advisor Safety for Volvo at the Volvo Cars Safety Center. He has a global view. Thomas has almost 3 decades of experience at Volvo and leads a team in the safety center that defines the foundation for the company's safety strategy. Thomas specializes in analyzing data from real-world crashes and uses that data to set the stringent safety requirements for all Volvo cars. Thomas is joining us from his HQ in Sweden, and he'll be giving us an insight about how developing economies like India can improve road safety by leveraging active safety technology in vehicles and improving driving standards. Thomas, over to you.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to be here and talk about my favorite topic. Thank you, Hormas, for your kind introduction. Pleasure. I'm just going to share some slides here. Well, I can talk for hours when it comes to safety, and I've been living with safety and Volvo cars for 3 decades, as Hormas pointed out, and it's really at the bottom of my heart. Well, when looking at road safety, you can ask, is it a problem? Well, when looking at the pure numbers, like Hormas pointed out, the numbers of fatalities and injuries on our roads, I would say it's not just a problem, it's epidemic. And if it's rising, it's even worse. And if you take the global perspective, the UN estimates that 1.35 million people are killed in road traffic accidents each year. Every year, 1.35 million people, for which are unprotected road users, like pedestrians and bicyclists. That's sort of mind-blowing, I would say. Then on top of that, you have the millions and millions, yet again, that get injured. The figures themselves in India and elsewhere are mind-blowing. But we also have to remember that behind these numbers are personal tragedies. It's someone's mother, it's someone's father, it's someone's daughter or son. So many people losing someone that you love. And you can also turn it around. We have this need for transportation. But imagine today if we came up with this solution, that we would have roads with individual transportation on two-wheelers or in cars, trucks, buses. And we went to the authorities and said, we have these very clever innovation regarding transportation. It has a backside though. It will kill 150,000 Indians each year, and it will injure 400,000. Do you think this would be allowed? So this is sort of the scene, the sort of where we have accepted the fact that you have a risk in transportation. For us at Volvo Cars, life is priceless. And that is why we have a mindset of zero. No one should be killed or seriously injured in a new Volvo car. And we're aiming for zero collisions. And being from Sweden, this is actually a mindset that we share with the Swedish government, who also have a zero fatality vision. What this means for us is that we do not accept the fact that you risk your life and limb just by transporting yourself. And we are determined to do something about it. And we have for many years. And this is something that is in our heritage, because at the end of the day, cars, vehicles are driven by people. So consequently, in everything we do is and must remain safety. So what can we do? Well, initiatives like this, I really applaud this road safety conclave, bringing joint awareness and dialogue. That is important. So what can we do more? Well, first of all, we need to have the right mindset. The mindset is important. We need to have the mindset not accepting the fact that you risk your life and limb in transportation. And we need to do our utmost in preventing that. Secondly, we need to collaborate, because it's not one solution that will fix this epidemic. It's multiple solutions. So collaborate, sharing knowledge, and also responsibility towards a common vision and common goals is important. Work towards zero. Thirdly, it's important to work systematically and work with multiple solutions, but it has to have a foundation in data, accident data, driving data, and it has to have a foundation in science, so that we're doing the right things, so that we know what we're doing. And I would like to promote the safe systems approach as presented by UN and the World Health Organization. And this actually has its origination from the Sweden's Vision Zero strategy. And this is a good framework to use in that perspective. And it starts from the standpoint of understanding the human. And it all starts with us as humans. So we need to understand the tolerances of impact, of course, and the behavioral aspects. And do this in order to have this as a foundation to work towards prevent fatalities, injuries, and accidents. So understanding the mechanism behind why we behave as we do, and if in crashes, when we get injured, what was the mechanism behind. In that, you can divide that in 4 important areas. We need, first of all, to help road users keep themselves safe. And we need to have safe vehicles. And we need to have safe roads where these vehicles users are operating. And it needs to be at safe speeds so that we give ourselves as humans the time needed to act and react properly to avoid collisions. And this needs to be done. If you take these and this framework, there's a number of areas that needs to be addressed. And Ormas mentioned a few good examples, but education and information. People are smart. With the right information, they will do the right thing. Kids are smart. Given the right education, they will also know what to do and what not to do in the right way. Licensing and registration is another means in this framework. And then, of course, to have road rules and enforcement of those rules is also critical in this perspective. You need to have monitoring and management and coordination in relation to this, so that you work in multiple areas at the same time. And then you need to have data and you need to have analysis. So real world data, real accidents, use that data and evaluate what the gaps are, but also how have we progressed. And these are important means also to drive innovation in technology, innovation in helping to prevent fatalities and injuries on our roads. So all these three, mindset, collaboration, and a complete safe system approach applies. It applies to India. It applies anywhere. What is good, as I mentioned, is that we see a lot of initiatives. It's the decade of action for road safety that the UN is holding together. There's been conferences around this, and people are, like in this conclave, joining forces together to address this in a very structured way. So what can we do then, we that are in this conclave? And I believe that it's over 300 of us. Well, and what can we do specifically for road safety in India? Well, helping people to understand and use the protection available in cars, like safety belts, buckle up, helmets if you're on two-wheelers, and so forth. And there are a lot of initiatives in this already, I know, but more can be done. And I think we have, in this conclave, as part of this conclave, we have a mission in also doing more there to promote that. And for us in here who are developing vehicles and how to address that when it comes to fatalities and injuries in crash, well, there are some fundamentals in that. And well, there will be for some time, even though we have a vision that there should be no collisions, there will be collisions. So the protection of the people inside the vehicles and outside the vehicles is paramount. And it's in relation to crashworthiness of cars and others, and proper restraints use. And there are a lot of harmonized and standards and also tests that exist to help drive this, and that is important. So the protection part is essential. It starts there. Then what we can also do is to promote and drive the implementation of advanced safety technologies in vehicles, collision avoidance, understanding driver's state, and these kind of technologies that are in cars today. And these also needs to be promoted to get and drive change into the vehicle fleet. And specifically some examples, collision avoidance technologies towards unprotected road users like pedestrians and bicyclists have a huge effect in real life safety and preventing loss of lives and injuries. And also driver assist technologies that exists and help drivers stay at their best. This is also something that should be promoted. Then in the safe systems approach, we need to continue to build our infrastructure, our streets and roads, so that they enable safe usage, that they are forgiving if someone makes a mistake, so that a simple mistake does not lead to the worst of consequences. We need to continue to drive education and information, as well as road rules and enforcement, to create safe roads using a safe speed, to give ourselves time, because we have to realize we are humans and we need time to act and react. We need to monitor, we need to collect data, we need to analyze and understand the gaps. We need this in order to prioritize the right things and also to follow up on our progress. And closing the gaps with proper data and analysis will also drive innovation. This is also important, and that will drive results. Collaboration is key to make this happen. Government agencies, organizations, and academia, together with the industry, we can make this happen if we collaborate. That is important. So to summarize and kick off this conclave, we need to use a safe systems approach. We need to collaborate towards common road safety vision, and it needs to have a mindset not accepting fatalities and injuries. These are the keys, I believe, to make roads safer in India and anywhere. And ladies and gentlemen, we all have the mission to make this happen because human life is priceless. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for that wonderful kickoff, giving a very holistic approach to safety. I think clearly, it requires, let's say, the multiple factors coming in. But, I think what really stood out, and we've got some questions also, is, fundamentally on the driver side. In fact, Jehan Kotwal has said, how much percentage would you say is driver behavior related for accidents, especially for Indian drivers? Can driving behavior improvement apps make a difference? And to take another question, we have one from Hari Kaushik also, who says that 80% of accidents are due to human error. So, at the end of the day, the point is the most important safety device, or for want of a better word, the safety factor is the driver. And, I think it's really down to the driver to stop the crash. And the best crash is one that doesn't happen at all. You can have all your safety systems, active safety, proper road engineering, but it fundamentally boils down to the driver. And, in your vision to go to zero fatalities, do you think this is really the weakest link in that mission and eventual goal, the driver?
Sorry, you broke up in your last part of your question.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think the point was, in your mission to go to zero fatalities, very ambitious vision in a car, do you think the weakest link actually is the driver? You can have all the technology, you can have everything there. So I think is that really where the main focus should be?
I would say yes and no. If you look at us as humans, we are remarkable in how we can be in complex environments and predict what is going to happen and not happen. So that's a strength that we have. as humans, and we have a lot of skills. At the same time, we have to realize that we are humans. So we have our limitations. And our approach in that is, yes, a lot of it is in relation to driver behavior, and you can have that aspect. But understanding that we are humans, our approach is how can we assist so that, and how can we support so that you don't get into these critical situations, and when you do, how can we help you? And that's really a part of the strategy, and I think something to humbly remember. Yes, we can change behavior, and yes, we can sort of do a lot of things in helping to avoid collisions, but really a very important part for us right now is to understand how we can sort of support when you really need it. Because we are humans and we cannot be fully concentrated all the time. We have our limitations and we need to understand it. So we are remarkable as drivers. We are fantastic. But at the same time, we have our limitations. So a human-centric approach is essential, and that's what we are all about.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for that human-centric approach. We are eventually humans. I think we have to accept that, not robots or perfect. So a long way off from autonomous cars coming. And until then, it will be the humans that really also determine how safe you are on roads. Thomas, really, thank you very much for that wonderful address, and appreciate you joining us all the way from Sweden. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah. So now we are moving to our our first panel for this session. It is the theme is upping the ante on safety, and we've got a really power-packed panel. I'd like to introduce my panelists. We have Mr. Rajendra Pedkar, who is the Chief Technical Officer at Tata Motors. We have Peter Solz, the Brand Director of Skoda Auto India. Both of them representing the car OEMs, and representing the two-wheeler side, we have Vinay Harne, who's the President of New Product Development of TVS Motor Company. And from the supplier side, we have Prashant Doreswamy, the President and CEO of Continental India. Gentlemen, thanks very much for talking to us. I'd like to kick off with both the car OEMs and, Mr. Pedkar, starting with you. You've Skoda and Tata obviously given a lot of emphasis on crash ratings, especially and work closely with GNCAP. So just to understand, the engineering and structural safety today in Indian passenger vehicles, how that's sort of evolved, and the kind of role of global watchdogs like GNCAP, how that is impacting consumer, let's say, purchasing decisions, and crash testing of cars. So I just wanted your thoughts to kick off on that, Mr. Pedkar.
So thank you, Hormaz, and good afternoon to all the viewers. Hormaz, I think coming to your second question first, which is about the Indian consumers. And I want to give the feedback because this is something that as a Tata Motor, we have been tracking, monitoring ever since we launched our journey as far as the GNCAP is concerned. And Tata Motor became the very first OEM in the country to offer the safest car with the Tata Nexon. That was in 2018. And we have been actually talking to the customers, potential customers, and trying to get the feedback. And the feedback is quite now clear to us that the consumers these days are actually prioritizing safety over the other things, like, let's say, the vehicle speed or the fuel efficiency or some of the other attributes. So there is a great, I would say, the emphasis and the realization which has come to the Indian consumers. And this is purely due to the fact that the safety or the safe mobility continues to challenge us as far as India is concerned, given by the statistics and the data that we have in terms of the accidents as well as the fatalities. Now, coming to the first part of your question, which is about the evolution of the car structure, I think this is something which has been happening. We have been on to this journey now. But I must say that when one has to design the car which is going to deliver the maximum safety, the journey actually begins at the point in time when you really conceptualize the car, which means to say that there is a limit to which that you can do for the car which is already in the production. So therefore, we give a lot of emphasis as a part of basic engineering at the time when we have to go for a new product or the new platform. We make sure that all the basic ingredients are in place in terms of the structural rigidity as far as the vehicle structure is concerned. So broadly speaking, there are 3 to 4 areas I would say. One is how you design the engine house area, which means it has a sort of a crumple zones below the where the engine actually sits. Then you have the passenger cage like a structure where all the drivers and the passengers, co-passengers are seated. And then you have the cockpit or the dashboard as well as the steering system, which play a very vital role when it comes to the post-accident, the injury, either it is to the chest or to the leg or to the foot. And therefore, how is going to be the disposition as far as the pedal box or the steering column and the structure around that is concerned. So a lot of emphasis as far as the structural design of the car is concerned. And then you go to the next step in terms of how do you define the layout, how actually you create let's say the energy transfer path, how do you design your manufacturing system for the weld spot, and then you carry out all kinds of the various permutation combinations to optimize the design. Because when you design the car, while it is right to say that it should be designed for the maximum safety, but then we should not try to compromise on the vehicle weight or the fuel efficiency, which is equally important to the buyers.
That's quite a trade-off, isn't it? You have to manage that balance.
Yes, and that's quite a trade-off, and therefore it's a, let's say, the blend of the many things that need to come together when you design the car structure. And Hormaz, I must also add here, nowadays with the electrification, which is coming to the center stage, the design of a car structure to actually house the batteries and the battery protection and the battery protection system against the potential accidents and what can go wrong in the battery is something as an integral part of the structural engineers when they basically design the car structure. So as a part of a passive safety, the vehicle structure has a lot to play in terms of how you design, how you configure, and also, in terms of if there are any upgrades which are required on the basis of the data that you might collect over a period of time, even though the car is launched, let's say, with the highest possible safety score, let's say GNCAP 5-star. But nonetheless, you tend to learn a lot by, valuable data that you would keep getting, especially during the useful life of the vehicle, because the vehicle gets exposed to the multiple, let's say, the driving conditions. And, so I think that you need to keep some space for the continuous upgrade in case something has to be tweaked. So I think it goes without saying that as a part of a passive safety, a lot depends on how you actually design the complete vehicle structure.
Right. No, thanks, Mr. Petkar. In fact, I'll come back to you a couple of questions, follow up on that, on active safety, and also the fact that, we'll rely a lot on GNCAP. Protocols have changed. Right now, it is only Skoda and Volkswagen, and we have Peter Solz talking about Skoda meeting the new protocols and 5-star. So technically, that is quite an achievement from a crash perspective. We'll talk later about whether you are going to upgrade your cars to meet those protocols in the future. But Peter, turning to you, firstly, congratulations, Slavia. A 5-star rated car under the new protocol. So that is quite an achievement from a crashworthiness point of view. But, a couple of questions here. To be honest, you're heading the brand. Clearly, this is very much a marketing kind of, let's say, carrot also, or let's say an accolade, which you all have been using a lot. So how important, again, is safety for your consumers? Mr. Petkar gave some data to say that is becoming more and more important. And, another honest question, do you feel that safety is just being focused on, what it does in a crash, whereas there's so many other aspects of safety, which is active safety, the driver, road conditions, etc. So, just your thoughts on, firstly, on achieving this fantastic result, to which the Slavia and, of course, Kushaq has also done both your products. But, is it a strong marketing tool to begin with?
Okay, so first of all, so thanks very much, Hormaz, for the warm introduction and also for the appreciation of our results with regards to the 5-star safety rating for Slavia, which was followed also with before with the Kushak. And first, I would like to start with what Rajendra Petka mentioned. I fully agree with the structural, so then body strength, that is really core. And for us in Skoda, it's nothing new that so now Kushak and Slavia have been recognized with a 5-star safety rating by a global NCAP in India. But for Skoda globally, so Skoda has been famous for building the strong and safety cars. And already since 15 years, all Skoda cars produced worldwide and offered worldwide are having the 5-star safety rating by the Euro NCAP. Yeah? And so I'm very proud that also the India-made cars, Kushak and Slavia, have been recognized for the same. So that both have achieved the 5-star safety rating, and not only for the front passengers, but also for the rear seat passengers. Because for us, our proposition is focusing on the families and also what you've mentioned. So what is more, and also in the intro speech, what is more important than our family's life. So, and this is part of our DNA and part of our philosophy to build safe cars. And this really starts with the technical development. We know that our package, we are not the cheapest on the market with our cars that we are offering, but we would like to pass on the message to our customers that the customers understand what they are paying for. And for us, the safety starts already with the development of the car, with the bonnet, with the skeletal structure of the car. And this is something that we have started to introduce and to show also the bonnet, the sculpture of the car to our customers at our dealerships. That also then our customers understand what is behind that the skeletal structure is robust. Yeah, so what kind of metal so we are using, what kind of also then strengthening parts as part of our body structure we are using. So yeah, this is something that is part of our premium as well. That it starts with the technical development and with the engineering of the car. And we took a cautious decision 5 years ago when we started to develop the cars for the India 2.0 that we put really emphasis on the safety. Knowing, okay, so that might be really, so we might be more expensive than the competition, but as I already said, safety is part of Skoda DNA, and we will continue in this. So therefore, now it is not only what we have mentioned. Is it a marketing carrot or not? For us, not. So it is definitely for us a proposition and part of our DNA, and we will continue in this. So, and for Skoda, we are happy with the achievements in terms of the volume for last year, and we will continue to expand on the market and bring more products to the market, which will have the same. So the focus will be to bring safe cars on the Indian roads for Indian customers. We can see that also then the Indian government is putting more and more emphasis on the safety, and also that the customers, I fully agree also what Rajendra mentioned, that customers are more cautious about the safety and look for on the safety features rather than maybe some other aspects. So of the speed, for example. So this is something that we will continue also in Skoda, bringing safety cars to India.
Right. No, that's a good, very good points, Peter. And I think, as you said that you are not the cheapest in your segment. Clearly, you are maybe on the pricier side, but that value you bundle in a lot of safety. And as you're saying, customers are seeing value in that. Clearly, I think what's coming out from hearing both you and Mr. Petkar is that, four-wheeler owners or car owners are valuing safety more and more. Clearly, I think the work of global watchdogs in creating a certain awareness has certainly played a role. But, just going to the other extreme, which is, and turning to Mr. Harne on the two-wheeler side. Mr. Harne, this sector sees the maximum amount of road fatalities just by the nature of, two wheels and four wheels. Just to get a holistic idea from you, how do you improve the safety of two-wheeler riders? I mean, does it start with just the basics? Helmets are not being used. I'm sure if just helmets were used, probably you'd be able to cut that figure by, I don't know how much, I don't know what the data is, but I would say, at least by 80-90%, because there's just a complete lack of awareness or even enforcement in something as basic as wearing helmets is not, followed. And, before we even get into proper riding gear and things like that. So, and then, later we'll just come to the engineering and what can be done on the two-wheeler itself. But here, fundamentally, there are just fundamental issues in road conditions, lack of basically a safety awareness amongst the two-wheeler rider himself.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a big problem. So actually, for two-wheeler manufacturers, safety is not just one of the attributes that should be achieved or something like that. It is actually a question of existence. The whole existence of our business or our customers and their survival depends on the two-wheeler riding safety. So it is utmost important. It is really paramount importance. And that is how we have been treating that. The biggest study which has been done on this area, Europe as well as in India, and by some of the European agencies in India, has also always focused and come out with the observation that the rider training for proper skills and proper care, it of course includes, the first thing is the helmet and riding gear, safe riding and defensive riding, having the right attitude while driving, not getting into the road rage kind of sudden mood. And if you are knowing the rules of the riding and following the rules, these are in that order. And so a lot of education, training, enforcement of helmet in some of the vehicles now we will be having so shortly, and we already have, where there is a digital display, there is a camera, and then it will remind you that you are not wearing helmet. And that is there in some of our vehicles now, already in progress. It will come out. But apart from that, if you look at on the bike side, we already implemented things ahead of time when it comes to ABS implementation, or done the CBS also. So the brake system is now really in place, ABS, CBS. And the next generation things, like where we have to go to advanced rider assistance systems, advanced or early warning brake systems, more development of motorcycle stability control. And those will come in the pipeline one by one. And those will be also, we will be ahead in most of those, in implementing those in the market. On the bike side, some basics, also I think the Indian customers and many of the, probably the readiness of people to do timely repair and maintenance, or the check of the vehicle before they go on a long ride, if that is ensured. So apart from the things like helmet, riding gear, following the rules, and then checking the vehicle before you go for a longer ride, in that order. Otherwise, if these are followed, then we have a good chance of high safety. And 90% of the problems can be solved within these 3 or 4 things.
Sorry, I was on mute. So clearly, Mr. Harne, I think, you've kind of highlighted the fundamental issues are there. And I quite liked the little bit of technology of a reminder of a camera to show that you're not wearing the helmet. I think that's quite innovative. Just to ask, is that in a development stage, or are you soon rolling that out in all your models? Because I think that could be something that really, it's like the speed limit warning, which has really helped. One beep at 80 and constant beep at 120, something so simple, which could make a big difference. Or like rear seatbelt reminder. Sometimes we miss the simple thing, which should make a huge difference. So just wanted to get your point. Do you think something like this, you could see the whole industry using, just a camera to detect whether you're wearing a helmet or not?
Yes, and this will come soon. So it will be there. And
right.
I don't think there is any big rocket science in that. Right. But yes, it should be done, and so we'll be also having that.
Right. Thanks for that. Very interesting. And Mr. Doraiswamy, I'd like to turn to you again. Mr. Harne said not rocket science for a lot of things, but in the end, science and technology is one factor that compensates for a lot of issues we have, whether it's bad driving, road engineering, and in the end, we need to have cost-effective technologies in India, because I think what's clear is that safety is costly.
Absolutely.
Safer the vehicle, the more expensive it is. That's just how it is. But we need to find that balance of what is affordable in India, so there's more mass adoption of it. So, just your thoughts on, let's say, cost-effective safety technology in India. Where is it getting democratized more and more? Do you see ADAS happening across both four-wheelers and two-wheelers? Right now, it's still in its infancy. I don't think people are really using it to their full benefit. There are even issues with it, especially in our conditions. And, just your thoughts on, which way is what is the appropriate technology that can really improve road safety?
Sure. Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me on this panel. I think safety is not just a good to have feature. I think it's a basic right. The question remains, as you rightly said, how to take vehicle safety to the next level at an affordable cost, right? Whereas market demand and adoption will increase as the consumers are more aware. And also we need to have this innovative products to make mobility safer in India. As the increasing complexity drives the need for reliable engineering in order to sort of avoid or at least detect and mitigate the malfunction that would lead to any person being injured, I think state-of-the-art definition, design, and implementation of any system must therefore always be the target. Keeping this in mind, and also Continental's vision for safety, that is Vision Zero, zero fatalities, zero injuries, and zero accidents. So what we are trying to do is keeping this in mind, to bring in these technologies to the Indian market. We know it's a value-driven market. How do we make it affordable? I think one of the ways is certainly having a local R&D. And that's what we have been doing in terms of identifying the white spots, which are market-specific requirements as well, and also make it affordable so that we can increase the fitment. Having said this, talking about ADAS, I think we have a long way to go. If you're talking about autonomous mobility, I think we need to split between its assisted, automated, and autonomous. While automated and autonomous is a long way to go for Indian market, because this not only car being perfect, because you need to have the right ecosystem, right discipline, right signboards, right infrastructure.
Yeah, no, Mr. Doraiswamy, just talking about something like level 2. Before we can get it, level 2, level 3.
Absolutely. That's where the assisted functions comes into a big usage. I think that's an extension of the current basic safety features, what we have like airbags and the ABS, or now most of the cars migrating to ESC. I think with the ESC fitment, I think this will allow to have this assisted function, which are basic level 1 and level 2 functions. I think that's there we see already what we see nearly about 5% of the top end cars having these basic functions like EBA, emergency brake assist, or be it before the matter, front collision warning, lane assist. So these are some of the features. I think this is a great potential. In next 2 to 3 weeks, we see a lot of these features getting fitted into the passenger vehicles. And our projection is by 2025, 26, at least 40% of the cars will have these features.
Sorry, what features specifically?
Assisted function features, like
right.
Because for all these features, the basic need is electronic stability control. While
right.
Government of India established the ABS sometime 3 years back, while ESC is still is not a mandate, it's still under draft stage. But we see today 90% of the cars produced across OEMs already has this ESC functionality adopted starting this January. So because ESC is a must for any of these functions to be integrated. So with this ESC already in place, we see in next 3 years, there's a big offtake on the assisted functions.
Right. So, but it's still level 1 largely. You're talking about ESC, you're not talking about going further, lane keep assist and all that. It's still very much a level 1 level, but you're talking about 40%.
Yes.
So still some way to go.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. And with that, I'd like to turn back to the the OEMs, and let's talking about active safety, because clearly Mr. Pedkar, Mr. Sols, GNCAP fundamentally has been on passive safety, more on crash. Now they have in their new protocols given more weightage to active safety, ESC and all that. But do you think, more needs to be done, quite frankly, on the active safety side? Just some basics like, rear seatbelt reminders, which are coming. TPMS, for example, which is a very, very critical factor. I know some of your cars have it on, but do you think these need to be mandated? I don't see them very expensive technologies, but they go a long way in actually, preventing what could be a potential accident. And, so in that sense, just your thoughts, Mr. Petkar, because as Tata Motors, sense one gets is, it's your narrative is that, to be honest, GNCAP is the ultimate factor of safety, whereas, it's a very important factor, but there's so many other factors which are not covered by the protocol. Underrides, for example, a big reason for road deaths because the truck underriders are not there. We've seen recently also certain accidents in that case, again, which are not covered by certain crash protocols. So just looking at it from a holistic point of view and specifically focusing on the active safety parts of, is that the next step? And as Mr. Doreswamy said, that, some of them are already there. So are Indian OEMs even moving ahead of regulations before they get mandated and automatically implementing them? Sorry, long question there.
Yeah, Horma, so thanks for this question. And but I must tell you that you're right in saying that the GNK protocol by itself is also evolving, and there are elements related to the active safety which have been the part of the latest GNCAP safety protocol. So that's where there is a gravitation happening toward the active safety. Coming to the Tata Motors and the active safety play, we have already launched the product which are delivering some of the active safety features, and we will continue to bring more and more ADAS or the active safety features into the upcoming products that we have planned. And as I say, for anything, like safety, it's an evolving journey, and basis what you get the data, the accident data, the user behavior data, and where exactly you need to make an intervention is something that is an integral part of, let's say, the product planning that we do and bring the features in the market. So we are very active, I must say, as far as the active safety part is concerned, and market introductions have already taken place and will actually get intensified going forward. And you see, what is important critically for the active safety or the ADAS is to actually capture the Indian use case scenario. So it is not about delivering a function for the sake of delivering that function, but it should make imminent sense as far as the user community is concerned. And in India, unlike in the Western world, we have a quite heterogeneous traffic situation and newer and newer use cases. And therefore, development of those active safety strategies is something that has to be kept in mind. And for Tata Motor, that is an integral part, I must say, of all the programs that we have on hands. And we'll be actually intensifying our efforts in bringing the active safety features.
Right. And Mr. Petkar, sticking with you because, you represent, obviously you're involved even from the commercial vehicle side of your company. And, I just realized you could give us a little bit of insight on that as well. Completely different dynamics on safety over there. Clearly, crash is not something important. It's to prevent the crash because, a truck being such a heavy and large object, it's the crashworthiness of what it hits, which is more important than the truck itself. So, let's say safety in commercial vehicles. Again, a big percentage of road deaths again. And in huge numbers, sadly, because, whether a bus or a truck has an accident, unfortunately, the loss of life is of a very sad and high scale. So really crucial improving the safety from the commercial vehicle front there. So just your thoughts on what needs to be done and what is being done.
Yeah, so I think this is a very, very pertinent question. And I think when it comes to the commercial vehicle, the challenges of different type. the focus there is more as far as the active safety features are concerned. But before I go to those active safety features, I think let me state very clearly that we have very active regulatory regime as far as the safety is concerned. And the commercial vehicles also are subjected to the requirements of various safety standards. So whether it is a truck body code, bus body code, the requirement of a vehicle tracking system, vehicle location system, whether it is related to connectivity protocol in terms of a data that need to be provided, should something go wrong. And on top of all this, of course, there is a vehicle recall policy which is in place. So the commercial vehicles have, come a long way in terms of a requirement as far as from the regulation side requirements are concerned. But look at what's happening, the vehicle profile of the commercial vehicles, the operator of a commercial vehicle, and the road infrastructure that we have, actually it poses a different kind of a challenge as far as the commercial vehicles are concerned. And the focus there has been more voluntary in nature, I must say. And from Tata Motors side, in the last year, that is 2022, we actually launched the country's safest truck with the ADAS features, even when there is no such a mandate, which is there. So on a heavy the commercial vehicle side, we have launched that product. And more vehicles actually are now going to be equipped with those ADAS features, which are important from the Indian duty cycle and the Indian vehicle profile is concerned. The another important aspect when it comes to commercial vehicle is about the driver. And, it's something which is a neglected community, I must say. And the drivers actually, they do the duty, which is beyond, say, 12 hours, 14 hours. There is a lot of fatigue. There are no appropriate, let's say, the locations where they can actually rest when, they are on the long duty. And the vehicle condition sometimes is not also very good, not good from the safety point of view. So what all that can be done as far as the driver community is concerned, and Tata Motor has taken a lot of initiatives and the efforts here in terms of basically establishing and collaborating with various state governments in setting up the drivers training institute. And it is not just for actually teaching them how to drive the truck, but also how to have the safety as at the forefront when it comes to the driving of a truck. The second important aspect, with the fatigue that comes in, the truck that we launched last year did have the driver drowsiness monitoring system, which means that there is a system, there is a camera which can detect the eyeball movement, and actually with a lot of data that is available in the computer, there is a alarm that goes on to indicate to the driver that you are actually driving, when you are not fully in your, let's say, the control as far as the truck is concerned. So the driver becomes very important here as far as the commercial vehicle, heavy commercial vehicles are concerned. And I think everything that is required to, ensure that the accidents can be avoided through the drivers is something that will continue to be the focus area as far as Tata Motor is concerned, beside the vehicle technologies.
Thank you for that, Mr. Pedkar. Clearly, with commercial vehicles, the driver is the key because, I think can't afford to have a driver who loses control of something that weighs, couple of tons. Peter, coming to you, you've heard all the panelists. We are moving more towards active safety, things like ADAS, because, again, to reiterate, while you've done fantastically well as passive safety, your car is very safe in the event of an accident. All the safety systems kick in. There are also some safety features which you've got, like ESC in your cars. Do you think the next push for safety, especially in Indian conditions, given our very chaotic driving conditions, is trying to prevent the crash as much as possible? And, from Skoda's standpoint, what more do you think needs to be done, or what do you think is the direction to go towards kind of, further take the safety as the topic is, upping the ante, the next step of improving safety?
Yeah, I think it's a very important aspect, and looking at the plan of the government to build the new infrastructure and the new roads and the new highways. So of course you will have also then the vehicles in a more, I would say, faster speed regime than in the cities. So definitely, so it can happen. So that certain situation will require really so more of the safety vehicles on the road. So especially on those new roads. So for that, passive safety in combination with the active safety will be absolutely essential. I'm convinced about that. So just a proof of the countries in Europe. So, and this is something that I only appreciate the initiative of Indian government of supporting the safety and introducing certain mandatory requirements. So I think also now with the stricter protocol of the global NCAP, yeah, I think this is a very good initiative, and I think it will become a standard for the future. Like really 15, 20 years ago, it was not necessarily a standard in Europe, and now so all the OEMs are deliberately going for the crash test and the safety testing. So I think so I'm convinced it will happen also here with the development of the infrastructure and the new roads that are planned over the next years in India. And for us, to your question about the active and passive safety on top of the features that we are offering, and already now we have all the ESC and rain sensor wipers or tire pressure monitoring. Also for the rear seat passengers and for our so then small passengers. So we have the ISOFIX child seats. Yeah, so an adaptive cruise controls line assist. This is all what we are offering at the moment, and we are taking also the ideas and the safety features from our cars and our engineers from Europe. So something what is now being introduced in Europe, we are then taking over to our cars in India. And this will also happen for the future. So if I have a look now on the example of a Kodiaq that we are having now, and what will the Kodiaq offer in the future, the same also our local engineers here in India are now developing for our future models here to be produced in India. So definitely it's a development. And as also the infrastructure will develop, it will require to bring more safety features, active safety, passive safety. And this is in our roadmap for Skoda for the future to bring with every new generation or new facelifts or model year every year to bring extra new safety features. And we have a good, I would say, good base in Europe where we can inspire with the additional safety features to bring to Indian roads.
Right. And, Peter, just sticking with you, because being a European manufacturer with the latest safety features, Europe really leading the way in safety in that sense. I just want to talk about costs, because I think sometimes there is a challenge of cost and safety, which again, I want to, I'll ask Mr. Harne on the two-wheeler side is even more critical, more sensitive. So, Peter, do you think, that's a bit of a challenge, or there's a bit of a balance? I mean, if you put everything in, will the car just become too costly? Do you need to just be ahead of the regulation? You're meeting your 5-star global NCAP, which is really the kind of gold standard which you have adopted for yourselves. But, how safe is safe, and how much do you think customers in India are willing to pay for it?
Yeah, you're right. And what I mentioned already at the beginning, that we are not the cheapest ones in our segment. But as also then the safety features and the safety requirements will develop, it will put pressure for all of us, on all the OEMs, then to adapt to that. And of course, so every one of us will have to invest to the safety. And I could see it also in Europe, so with the strict requirements that, of course, put the pressure on the costs and on the new development. So yes, something that might be more premium in terms of the price at the moment, yeah, so it might be a standard for the future. So you are right, it has to be a right balance as well. Yeah, so not to go in excessive way, but for us, we put it very clearly, as I said a couple of years ago, it was our cautious decision to focus on the safety, despite it brings certain, so then pricing premium. But this is also our strong communication tool that for our customers, we ensure the safety in our vehicles. And this is something that I'm convinced that also for the other OEMs, yeah, so that alongside they will bring the safety features, which will also, of course, cost certain money. And then also then the pricing situation may stabilize. But of course, you're right. If it's not 100% then mandated, then it gives you certain maneuver space, and it has to be in a balance.
Right. But I think very clearly Skoda taking the approach, don't want to compromise much on safety. If there's a cost to it, so be it. We want to take the high ground on safety. And that's what the brand has done. Mr. Arne, turning to you on the two-wheeler side, is it more of a challenge, especially putting in safety features? Because as a percentage of the total value of the vehicle, it's quite high. So really, I think, especially things on the ADAS front, which I know there's a lot being done on the two-wheeler side as well. Is this something which, you are, and the segment being so cost sensitive, so price sensitive, puts really huge pressure on you, and to find that balance is a challenge. So just wanted to know your experience and what do you think is the way forward, or do you think it's finally regulation which is going to have to be mandated so then all OEMs, stick to that standard, and then it's the same for everyone? Because as Peter said, if it's beyond the regulation, then it's up to you to choose the balance.
So we are looking at it in two ways. And so I will explain what my thoughts about the cost are. First of all, this synchronized braking system, ABS, has been already done in two-wheelers.
Yes.
The tubeless tires are there in most of our vehicles, and LED lighting, so that there is a good safety in the night, and you don't hit into a pothole and fall. So LED lighting with reliable lighting system, tubeless tires with reliable tires and air pressure, and ABS and CBS. These have been done already. And these are all now part of the vehicle cost. So we don't go back to those as cost. From that base, if you start, the
Right.
next most important in my mind will come to the qualifying process for the people riding two-wheelers. The qualifying for two-wheeler and specific licensing for two-wheelers with the extra care, which is there in most of the developed countries where the accident rates have come down. The education and training of people for riding a two-wheeler is quite stringent and quite well thought through. Those rules have to come into India, where people get filtered properly by that process. Apart from that, then monitoring and really controlling, also making sure enforcement of traffic rules. So this will be another one which is really low cost. If you qualify people properly, if you educate them about the safety, if they follow traffic rules, and if you enforce that traffic rule, I think 90-95% of the problem will be done. And even this I consider as a basic necessity, and I consider as a requirement for a low cost topic. If you look at the death rate today, it is not really high cost to enforce this. Then we come to how do we do this education? Probably we should start from school, where people listen more, and in the school education from children or high school, if we start training them about the road use, because even today a lot of road users who are neither riding a two-wheeler nor a car are also dying due to accidents. And so everybody learning about the two-wheeler safety, everybody writing about driving safety, but also about the road use safety itself has to become a part of a school education and should be pushed. Even that I will consider as one of the low cost, if you say cost of the vehicle. But then we come to the technology, which is like forward collision warning, emergency brake assist, or adaptive cruise control, maybe ride-by-wire, cornering stability, cornering ABS. So when we come to these, we are looking at providing these as options in one of the variants of the vehicle, where every product will have a higher and higher variant. And
The customer has a choice if he wants it.
Who are ready to buy will buy that, but the base vehicles will be already covered with those 5-6 things which I mentioned. So
Right.
Base vehicles which are cost competitive are well covered. Apart from that, people who are, we can call it advanced users, they need advanced protection and advanced safety systems. And we'll be able to give them this also. This is what I look at the whole thing.
But Mr. Arne, that's interesting. Just want to make a point on that. As we've seen with both Mr. Solz and Mr. Petkar saying that there is a kind of let's say affinity with the four-wheeler people to move towards or gravitate towards safer products, and it's giving them a competitive advantage. how do you see the demand or uptake for these safety features in the higher variants? I know they're not there, but what is your sense? Do you think it will be a very small percentage to start with because you're covering the basics with the 4 or 5 features, you know, like you said, something simple like a tubeless tire or ABS? Do you think in the two-wheelers that kind of adoption for products with higher safeties will be slower because it's a more cost-sensitive and price-sensitive segment?
I don't think so. I have seen when the ABS came in, it was quite expensive, but for the big bikes, like even not really big, our case it is 300cc. Right. But even in that, most people always preferred that the Apache also should have what they have in the bigger bikes. And so, yeah, if you look at 125cc or 150cc, probably there is a chance that somebody will choose the lower variant, somebody will choose the higher variant. But when we go to really these high-speed vehicles, people will choose the safer options if we provide them, and that is what we are looking at, that we provide and people will choose those options beyond the base option.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Arne. Mr. Doraiswamy, you know, you've heard all the panelists and, you know, just looking at, I think what we are seeing is really a cost versus safety feature kind of discussion going on. And what's heartening to see from hearing from everyone is that customers are willing to spend now on safety, something probably they never did 5 years ago. And again, clearly led by manufacturers, you know, talking more about safety or promoting safe products in terms of their crash ratings. I think that way Tata Motors, Skoda have done a lot in that regard. So really this awareness has increased. I mean, just from your point of view, do you see, let's say, a demand in safety features, safety technology really going through the roof, you know, for going forward? And how do you, what is your projection or forecast for this?
Sure. Even before I come to that, I think we need to bucket this active safety and comfort feature. For example, ADAS, if I talk about what are those active features? Automatic emergency brake, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, and also they're passive, right? Like forward collision warning, lane departure warning, blind spot detection, and also some amount of comfort features like adaptive cruise control, I-beam assist, traffic assist. So I think this we need to differentiate. What is the basic need from the safety purpose? What is that comfort which could be in a option for this thing. Having said this, I think what we see is passive increase in the passive safety technologies apart from that, because passive safety technologies acts as an extra layer of protection for the drivers, yeah, and also the vulnerable road users. So there we see a huge intake. Mr. Arne was talking about some of the features like in two-wheeler. I know the two-wheeler is a very sensitive matter subject. Now, having installed ABS already, for example, in 2 years, there are many functions which could be adopted with a software help, which doesn't require an additional extra burden in the cost. With a very minimal cost, we can add features. For example, if I have to talk about ABS in a two-wheeler, for example, you can have an optimized curve braking, where this is a feature which helps riders apply the brakes in sort of a curves or a turns, or even for that matter, traction control system, or the electronic drag control system, or the front lift protection, hold and go. So these are some of the features which are more of a safe, which are very impactful safety feature, but more of a software functions. I think that's where suppliers like us have to work with OEMs alike, so that jointly we make it more cost effective.
Right. And, you know, lastly, we are running out of time. We have time for one more round of questions. I think I just want to talk, which is important, is on the regulatory environment and regulation. I think even the Indian government has done a lot. I mean, if you just see the basic crash ratings, you know, AIS 098 and so on, from 2017 to 2019. After 2019, all cars have had to meet this. Obviously, a lot has been done. You know, the impact this has had on model timelines, on costs, obviously put a lot of pressure on the OEMs. So, Mr. Pedkar, you know, starting with you, the regulatory environment, I think a lot has been pushed into on the safety side, and even small things like you could have a seatbelt warning reminder, you could have a speed warning reminder. Now, these may be small, but obviously they take up a lot of bandwidth time. They have to be validated. Would you like the regulation being done in a consolidated way, in proper jumps? Because everything seems to be coming every 6 months sometimes, which becomes a challenge for the OEM. And also what I'd like you to touch upon is the new battery safety regulations, which is again, quite challenging. And obviously it's good for safety, but I think very, very stringent. So, just the whole, the regulatory kind of environment right now and the path we've taken, obviously it's all in the interest of safety, but I'm sure there are pressures, all sorts of pressures on OEM to meet these.
Yeah, thank you, Hormaz. In fact, I said in one of my previous answers that in India, we have, the very active regulatory regime as far as the safety is concerned. And especially in the last 4 to 5 years, there has been a strong push, and rightly so. And we actually welcome that. And this is across all categories of the vehicles, and especially on the four-wheelers, passenger car as well as the commercial vehicles. So this is something which is now going on. And I think now what's coming in the pipeline is about the 6 airbag.
Right,
Then we are also talking about the, then Bharat NCAP, which is akin to global NCAP as the Indian standard. And also the slew of regulations which have come as far as the battery safety is concerned, driven by the concern that there have been multiple such incidences as far as the EVs are concerned. So therefore, I think everything is happening for very right reason. I think you touch upon to the very important part that, whether there should be such an intervention every 6 months or 3 months. And that is something that we have been working and collaborating with the government. And in most of the cases, I would say that the government is able to appreciate the viewpoint that is being brought up by the OEMs. And so therefore, there is some tweaking and the adjustment which is done. I think primarily what we are saying is that there be a harmonization of the regulation. So when there is a major step change that is coming in terms of, let's say, the introduction of any emission regime change, wherein you bring in a lot of other technologies, then actually you combine that with the safety requirements so that then, it becomes like a wholesome package rather than bringing something with every now and then. And not to forget
the life cycle also of the models.
Yes, and not to forget about the cafe interventions which have been happening, right? So there are many things which the government wants to do. We welcome that. I think it's just important that we engage and understand the lead times that it takes. And finally, everything has an impact as far as the affordability and the cost is concerned. So this is something which I would say that we from the OEM side, we monitor, track very closely. We participate in all those discussions, and most of the cases we are able to find a way forward, right? But we also must admire government for the fact that where we want to go and where we are, there is still a large gap, and therefore, sometimes when one talks about leapfrogging, I think it is something which is in the best interest of the, let's say, the Indian population, and the government always will take those decisions which are going to have the impact across the board. And it is, you see, despite all these regulations that we have been having, and the mute question to be asked is that have we been able to bend the curve as far as the accident statistics are concerned? And the short answer is no, right? I mean, we still talk about 1.5 lakh. That is the number which has remained static almost for the last 3 to 4 years, despite such a strong push from the government and the voluntarily additional, the interventions by the OEMs. So despite all that, I think we are still not there, and therefore it's a very sensitive topic. And I think we must, come together, collaborate, and ensure that there is a meaningful way forward that is put in place. Coming to the electric vehicle, I think this is something that has happened as a knee-jerk reaction to this spate of incidences which happen, especially on the two-wheelers, and also a sort of, the import which was happening from some countries not meeting the quality standard, and many things had to be straightened out. And therefore, toward the last quarter of the last calendar year, the government came up with the number of additional requirements as far as the batteries are concerned, and in terms of, let's say, the design, in terms of the BMS, that is the battery management system capabilities are concerned, and how do you do the validation and the various kinds of a test, and how the functional safety is also becomes an integral part of the overall vehicle safety. So all those now the requirements are in place. There was a sort of I would say a commotion to start with, because we were actually fearing that we may have to suddenly stop the production with the huge inventory that was already procured for building of these vehicles. But now everything is behind us. I think there has been good give and take between government and the OEMs and the component industry, and we have moved on now. And but I think this is something which was required. I would say in the hindsight, maybe could have been better managed, but I think it's finally there was a midway that was found out, and it's all delivered now.
Thank you, Mr. Petkar, for that very frank response. Could have been better managed, but I think in the end, the best interests for safety. Peter, turning to you, 6 airbags. I think you have already done that. Not an issue for you all. You all have met a very high safety standard as far as your ICE vehicles go. But you've got an EV strategy which you all have talked about. Would regulations like this, as Mr. Petkar said, they seem to be a bit extreme and a knee-jerk in relation to certain incidents that happened with two-wheelers, and now it's across the board. Could this bringing of these regulations for global OEMs, which are already designing vehicles to a certain standard and for a small volume have to then kind of revalidate it to the local standards, does this add to the cost and maybe even put certain delays on programs that you might be having? And what do you think? Do you think this is something which is an issue, or it's just in the best interest of safety? It might be a headache, but you have to go ahead with it.
Well, I would put it into 2 levels. If we talk about the EV cars that we might be bringing from Europe, then all these vehicles are already fulfilling all the safety standards and 5-star regulations in Europe. So for that, I don't see any risk on adding additional cost factor with regards to some newly introduced safety regulations in India. Of course, if we localize here and then there are new regulations, then embedded and in place, approved by the Indian government. I do agree it is important for the local OEMs here that such regulations are announced in advance, because then we can react on it. So we have a good reaction time on really. So then talking to our suppliers, make sure it's really so then developed for us at a reasonable cost level. Rather than some inefficiencies if we really try to fulfill it. So this is something that is really important. And in general, I really appreciate the steps of the Indian government on putting, I would say, a greater focus on the safety. For us, so far we have taken a deliberate decisions to communicate the safety and bring maybe more than required safety to our vehicles. We will continue in this. And for me, I see it that what is important for the customers. So therefore, for the customers who are driving our cars, and also for the other customers and passengers in the other cars. So also then the pedestrian safety and also then other passenger safety out of our cars. So this is something that we are putting a lot of emphasis. But I think for the safety on the road, what is also important is a greater amount of the education for driving, because there will be more and more roads in the future, more and more people on the road. Car market only for passenger vehicles will go towards 4 million cars during this year, with a growth, I would say, a great probability to go towards 5 million in the foreseeable future over the next coming years. So more and more people will be on the road, and more first-time buyers will be on the road. So I think the overall education of the society, of the people is very important. Not only us as the OEMs, that we will bring safer cars on the road, and I do hope that also other OEMs will join us in this kind of safety messages and bringing more safe cars on the road. And then the government will continue with the steps of introducing some mandatory safety requirements. But then I think part of this, the whole chain, it is important that also then our customers will get more educated in terms of the driving and being safe on the roads, which is very important to save people's life.
I think, Peter, you've raised probably the most pertinent point in the discussion. Frankly, at the end of the day, it is the driver. As I've said earlier, also, you can have the best technology, but I think the biggest, I won't say, as I said, not safety device or safety factor is the person behind the wheel. I think that's what Mr. Harne was also spoke about. More important with two-wheelers, I think very, very critical, just given, the physics of two-wheelers, two wheels, small size, lightweight, generally vulnerability is much, much higher. But Mr. Harne, again, a quick one back on the regulation part of it. Clearly, not you all, but certain two-wheeler manufacturers have had safety and reliability issues, and government has painted the whole sector with one brush and made some pretty tough regulations across the board. So just looking at the EV safety regulations, obviously to be welcome, but again, as Mr. Pedkar said, and even Mr. Salz alluded to, sometimes they tend to be knee-jerk. Do you think there should be just a more structured approach to the way regulations are rolled out? And again, Mr. Pedkar raised a very value point. They should all be bundled together. So it protects the life cycle of the car. It just causes less hassles. Even from a validation point of view, you can plan it better because I believe all the testing agencies are absolutely chock-a-block, with OEMs trying to develop products to constantly meet new regulations coming out. So, just your overall thoughts on the regulatory environment and, is it fine and what could be done better as terms of safety goes?
Yeah, I understand that. Actually, in the EV, what has happened is there was a very early surge of lot of really not well qualified manufacturers coming in with their vehicles. And some of them had problems. And because of that, really something had to be done. So that was a really emergency situation in the country where basically the doubts about EV or EV capability in India would have been raised otherwise. And so government, what they did to really bring in certain qualifying capability and qualifying products, both sides, was really a good thing. And that at that moment, I think it was a right step to be done even out of turn or on an emergency basis.
Right.
That has been done now. Yes, everybody has implemented. It has automatically reduced some of those manufacturers who did not have any qualifying capability in-house or did not have the quality of parts they were buying from unknown brands. So that is all gone now. It is very useful. Beyond this, if you look at, yes, actually currently the two-wheeler safety standards, if you look at for the braking or any of the two-wheeler basics, we are on par with anywhere else in the world. We have some India-specific standards, and those are all required in India. Like, for example, rim bend standard, because there are bad roads and potholes. If there is no standard on rim bending, and if the rims fail, then there is a risk. So there are special standards like this. There is a SARI guard. There are special standards like this. And these which are pre-planned and implemented in an organized way, it is always helpful. For all our new products, we can go with the new things if there is any such new thing coming up for electric also. So electric vehicle, what happened was required. From now, if it is well organized, it will be helpful.
Right. Thanks, Mr. Arne. Very valid point. So I think from your point of view, the kind of battery regulations which suddenly came through was an emergency situation. And though inconvenient to the OEMs, was important to kind of restore the faith in EVs and make sure that on an emergency basis, certain safety precautions were taken and implemented. Good point over there. Mr. Doraiswamy, turning to you, and frankly, we're running out of time. This will be the last question we can take is, again, on the regulatory environment, you've heard all the OEMs speak in this regard. As a supplier, do you also feel certain lead time needs to be given to kind of implement certain technologies, testing, validation, all that? It requires time. That's just the nature of the beast of the auto industry.
Absolutely. I fully endorse the panel. I think it will be really good if government can focus over next 2 to 4 years. What are those technologies at what time frame they're going to bring with enough consultation that will really help the industry and also to be a little bit more efficient, because one, from the capacities perspective, and also, as you rightly said, in terms of the testing capabilities, we run into a lot of challenges. Having said this, while government is really looking at a lot of this new technology, I think we have a long way to go when it comes to transformation in the infrastructure also. I think there also, I think we need to have a lot of focus. Well-marked roads, standardized road signs across the country, better town planning, and also the GPS accessibility and the wireless connectivity with more connected features coming. I think these are some of the things which also has to evolve. It's not only important that we introduce these technologies, but infrastructure also should be good enough to support the usage of these technologies.
Right, right. No, thanks very much. And I think, with that, I'd like to wrap up a very, very interesting panel. In fact, to me, it's been a very heartening discussion, because I think what's clearly come out is that, if you just go back, I would say even 5, 6, or 10 years, how far behind we were in the safety game. But clearly, we've seen regulations take our safety up several notches. And OEMs themselves take it as a kind of being a differentiator. Manufacturers like Tata Motors and Skoda, who've really kind of put a lot into safety and gone beyond even what is the bare minimum regulations. I'm talking only as far as crash safety goes. There's a lot to do with other safety as well. And clearly, as Mr. Harne said, India being such a large two-wheeler market, we already evolved in a lot of, our safety regulations are quite evolved as well. Even something like rim bending has a certain standard because of the nature of our conditions. And clearly, from the supplier side, obviously, they are rising to the game as well to support the industry. So a lots more to talk on. As you rightly said, Mr. Doraiswamy, road infrastructure, driver behavior, such a vast subject. But, on this panel, we focused on largely on the technologies and what needs to be done. And gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. We've got a whole list of questions, quite frankly, but we've kind of unable to answer them. But I think a lot of them have been touched upon in the discussions. But it's really great to know that this panel has had a lot of interaction from our audience over here. Apologies, we've not been able to take your questions because we have run out of time. But once again, to all my panelists, thank you very much. And I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mayank Tingra, for the last session, which is a technical presentation. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Hormas, for moderating and summarizing that really enriching panel discussion. And thank you to all the panelists for joining us here. We've really had a very engaging session. I would now like to move to the next session, which is a technical presentation on the topic on the way to autonomous mobility from ADAS, market drivers and technology enabler. We have Mr. Ganesh Rao, Location Head, Engineering Platform and Ecosystem, Continental Autonomous Mobility India. Mr. Rao is a BE in Electronics and Communication and an MBA from NMIMS University, Mumbai. He has over 2 decades of experience in the automotive industry and has been associated with autonomous mobility and ADAS domain for the last 10 years, serving multiple leadership roles across radar, camera, AI, and data analytics, among others. Mr. Rao will take us through his presentation, which focuses on the ADAS trend, and we would be taking up questions with him at the end of his presentation. Over to you, Mr. Rao.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayank. Just give me a second.
Sure.
I hope I hope it's visible, right?
Absolutely, yes.
All right. Namaste. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ganesh Rao. I'm part of the Autonomous Mobility Organization in continental India. ADAS and ADAS, autonomous mobility, are the buzzwords in the market today. If you go to any showroom, vehicle showroom today, and one of the first pitch from them is around ADAS technologies, right? It can do autonomous braking, it can do emergency braking, it can do cruise control, surround view vision, and so on, right? This is quite a buzzword now. Similarly, autonomous mobility, which is self-driving cars or autonomous vehicles, different names. This is also quite a buzzword in the auto industry because it is a holy grail we all want to reach for multiple reasons, right? One of them is safety. That's why we are talking about it today in this meeting. So I'm going to talk about on the way to autonomous mobility from ADAS, market drivers, and also technology enablers. Pitch for ADAS, the value proposition for ADAS for a long time has been safety first and then comfort as well, right? What you see here in the slide is fairly old data, which is always has been the pitch that through ADAS, we need to reduce fatalities and accidents, right? You see, even in 2018, 1.3 million people were dying on the road all over the world. And even in India, if you see multiple reasons, around 1.5 lakh people are dying on Indian roads as well. one thing is common here, that is around 80 to 90% of it is caused due to human errors. And it is said that from BASD organization in Germany, 70% of all serious accidents could potentially be avoided by driver assistance systems. This ADAS as a technology is existing since almost 1997 when the first radars were introduced from Conti and Conti as well. So almost 3 decades it has been around, right? So was this statement from BASD true? Let's talk about it. If you see this graph here, this actually showcases from 1980s till 2020 various regulations introduced by the German government, right? Around safety, right? Initially, if you see, they were all around brakes, airbags, ESP, and so on. But since 2000, all these new regulations that have come are actually ADAS regulations, right? First started with adaptive cruise control, then the lane departure warning, AEB, emergency brake, and so on, right? Up to traffic jam assist and so on. And this trend will continue. And as you see here, the only next step is towards zero fatalities, zero crashes, and zero injuries, right? We don't know when, but that is our goal. We need to go there, right? Every human life is valuable, right? Now, this can be only possible by reducing the human error, by taking control from human or the driver, taking more and more control away from the driver, by giving him the warnings or trying to prevent steering or the brakes. Also, increase the comfort of the driver, to reduce fatigue, also to reduce distractions. So various ADAS features exist today, and we are in the path of Vision Zero, as I mentioned. Right? Now, as I said before, to reduce human errors, we have to give more and more control to the machine away from humans. So how do we do it? As an engineering problem, if we have to go, first take limited control of steering and braking, and later full control of steering and braking. In the next step, okay, take the complete driver off from the steering and the braking, and then okay, even the mind away from driving, right? And eventually the holy grail, which is driverless vehicles, right? SAE has defined 5 steps of this transition from the without any driver assistance towards self-driving, right? So we call it as level 1 is driver assistance, level 2 is partial automation, conditional automation, high automation, and finally full automation. So level 5 is primarily autonomous vehicle or self-driving vehicles and so on, right? Various organizations call it differently. But for the end consumer, how does it look and feel? Because they can only feel functions, right, or features on the vehicle. So at a driver assistance level, they can see the adaptive cruise control, emergency brake assist, and as they go for more and more automation at higher speeds, even at traffic jams, right? You get to drive like an ACC and so on, right? Now this transition from level 1 to level 5, which is pretty much going from advanced driver assistance systems towards autonomous mobility, is an expensive proposition, right? Self-driving was a buzz. I mean, everyone talked about self-driving being introduced by 2015. Then they talked, okay, it will come in 2020. Then they said 2025. Now, okay, people are talking 2030 maybe. Right now, at least they are saying maybe it will come in 2030, right? Because it is expensive, right? The amount of redundancy you need to introduce, amount of the data recordings you have to do in the real world, amount of validation you have to do, amount of sensors you have to put in the vehicle are extremely high. So this transition from ADAS to AM, so is primarily driven by around 3 factors, the way we see it. First one, the first 2 topics I think I already mentioned, safety and comfort, right? safety has been one of the very first motivators for ADAS, comfort as well, right? And this is continuing, and this is a promise as well for future when we reach level 5 as well, right? Safety for the passenger, safety for the environment, also for the vulnerable users will only increase through more and more autonomous vehicles, more and more automation. And this adoption of level 1 to level 3 is quite, I think it's also increasing in passenger vehicles and also in trucks. But when it comes to level 4 and level 5, because of the, as was discussed also, right? Because of the cost and the complexity, as of today, we see that the entry will be more in trucks for the cargo movements, also maybe in the fleet for the passengers, right? Moving passengers from one place to other, because it gives you scale, it gives you a lot of cost efficiencies, because in Europe and in US market, there is huge shortage of drivers, right? And this also should help the fleet managers and the taxi companies to manage their problems, right? And if you see Indian market today, if you see the global market, where we stand, level 1 and level 2 are fairly available all across the world. Even in Indian market, many of the premium SUVs and even today, both Indian OEMs and the global OEMs are introducing ADAS features up to level 1 and level 2, some part of it. So it is already there, right? Let's be clear about it. We have ADAS functions in Indian market being sold, right? Now coming to level 3, only 2 vehicles actually qualified or officially certified as of last year, one from Honda and one from Mercedes, right? Now coming to level 4 and level 5, Continental, we ourselves are working with a company called Aurora for US market, with which we are going to introduce level 4 technologies, level 4 automation systems for a truck fleet, right? And level 5 for sure, we have already discussed. I think pretty much many of you are also aware, Waymo, then Cruise, and then a lot of players in Chinese ecosystem. So they are all promising level 5 self-driving vehicles even today, but for a limited geography, because of the cost involved in scaling them to other cities and cost involved in introducing them to other markets, right? It is not yet scaled that much, right? Everyone starts in, let's say Google has started in Waymo, maybe they will in Phoenix, maybe they will extend it to some more areas. That's it. They're not talking about other regions in the world. Similarly, the Chinese OEMs are talking about some cities in China, but not outside at this moment, right? Okay, with that information, first let's look at safety as a topic. So safety as a market driver for this transition from level 1 to level 5, right? This slide is primarily the information coming from Euro NCAP, which was one of the primary regulatory bodies which drew the ADAS adoption in Europe and US and the world. What you see from left to right is primarily the scenarios becoming more complex, right? So in 2025, if you have to get level 5 certification, you have to pass all these scenarios, right, in the proving grounds. This means you have to, as a driver, you have to give the control to the vehicle more and more, to the systems, to the machine. And this way we have more and more safety coming into the vehicles, right? So as I said, L1 to L5 is a safety story as well for the next foreseeable features. After a while, maybe all the safety scenarios maybe would have been taken care. But then again, we should also ensure that it works in construction zones. It works in Indian traffic, it works with other animals. It works in Australia when kangaroo is jumping, when it should work in Norway when moose is crossing the road, and so on, right? So these regulations will continue to evolve, right? Even Euro NCAP has released a guideline document up to 2030, right? So focus on safety in this transition from L1 to L5 is a reality, and it will not go away. And L1 to L5 story is a story of safety as well, right? We need it for India also. Yeah. Another storyline, as I talked about value proposition, is comfort, right? As you see here, what you see is from L1 to L4, various comfort technologies are mapped. If you see in this line, it talks about rear vision, surround view vision, right? And as you go towards the right, you will talk about automated parking. You will talk about valet parking here when you reach L3 systems, right? Similarly, when it comes to initially, you will talk about only entry ACC, then you will talk about ACC stop and go, you will talk about lane change assist. Later, you will talk about hands-off cruising, less than 80 kilometers. But when your systems are much more capable, you will talk about hands-off cruising at higher speeds, right? Later towards automated cruising and so on, right? And if you see here, around L2 systems, NCAP 2025, 5 stars are mandated, right? So safety is a must, as I said. Along with that, comfort features will also increase more and more. So as an industry, what we are solving today and future is more and more towards comfort, right? And then as soon as we focus here and solve it, we are also moving towards L5. That is the message, right? Now, coming to the L4 and L5, as I mentioned, the focus is towards how to manage this exorbitant cost, how to get the efficiency and the scale. The first program that we are working now along with Aurora, which was already announced to the market. So it's primarily a platform, they develop platforms for trucks. So by 2027, it will come on the road. It's fully L4 capable. I think it has close to 50 plus sensors. It is for a purpose of moving the cargo from Dallas to Los Angeles 24/7, right? Continuous operation. In terms of a system, it has two systems, right? One is the main system as well as a backup system. Main system has its own sensor cluster. Main system has its own computational capabilities. It has its own path planning. Now the backup system as well has its own separate cluster, sensor cluster, separate computation, separate path planning as well. Why? Because there is no one sitting on the driver's seat. If something happens to the main system, the support system or the backup system will take over, come out of the highway, come out of the fast lane and take it to a safety zone, even if it is 10 kilometers away, right? Supposed to be the system expectation is at least to 20 to 25 minutes. It should be able to run autonomously on a support system or the backup system, right? This is the kind of safety we are building into the L4 capable systems, right? And this is a mandate, right? Because it is said somewhere that every vehicle on the road, whether two-wheeler or up to trucks, they are like a bullet, right? They can traverse at such high speeds. They can impact the vulnerable road users. They can impact the ecosystem and infrastructure and so on, right? We should be extremely careful when we are developing these systems. So fallback mechanisms are a must when it comes to L4 because this is also a mandate, right? As I said, coming to L5 vehicles, their full focus is on fleets, either for cargo or for passengers, right? And this technology already exists. Everyone thought that L5 vehicles will dominate. Waymo and Google will dominate this whole autonomous mobility industry and so on. I think there is some kind of balance coming in terms of technology, in terms of cost arbitrage, the cost versus value propositions and so on. So towards the fleet, towards the like rental cars and so on, I think there is a good value proposition and the focus has moved towards that, right? Waymo doesn't talk about selling the vehicles to consumers, right? Similarly, the Chinese players who are working in this field. Now, then let's quickly talk about the technology enablers, which are ensuring that this dream of moving from L1 to L5 can happen, right? It was not possible 20 years ago, right? With consistent investment from the OEMs, from the tier ones, from technology providers, we have reached a stage where we can talk about it and we can plan it and make it happen, right? First is around sensor technology. Sensor in a vehicle, in an L1 to L5 vehicle, is always visualized as a sensor cluster, right? You will have cameras, you will have satellite cameras, radars, LIDARs, and surround view systems, ultrasonic sensors, and so on. Multiple combinations are used based on whether it is an L1 or an L5, right? As I said, L4 system can have up to 50 sensors. An L1 system can have maybe at least 4 to 5 sensors, right? Why? Because every sensor has its own unique properties, right? Camera is extremely good in object classification. It's like our eyes. Radar is extremely good in around velocity, right? So ACC kind of functions, radar is used, right? So it's always a combination of sensor. A lot of players, I mean, at least few players or OEMs talked about, okay, we will only use camera and so on, but slowly they've also realized it's impossible. Now everyone talks about a sensor cluster to be used, at least from L2 and above, right? Camera can do quite a bit of, camera has quite a good amount of capabilities, but as you move towards higher automation, you need sensor clusters, right? Second element, second technology which has really taken off and gained speed and grown leaps and bounds is around perception and deep learning. For a long time, all the perceptions, the way we do computation on the camera image, which is actually the real world, the way car sees it, right? Used to be around classical machine learning. The capabilities were limited. We could detect human, maybe not animal, and so on. Now with deep machine learning, I think as they say, okay, collect the recording from the world, feed it to the neural network, and it will train itself. The capability of the neural network is as good as the amount of data, the quality of data you feed in, right? So a lot of research is going on here, quite a bit of capability to the capability to move from L1 to L5 is clearly enabled by the huge advancement in this technology, right? Artificial intelligence. Next topic I wanted to highlight was around data acquisition, storage, and virtual data, and also moving towards cloud. Data, when we talk, it's primarily video recordings that we collect from the real world, the radar recordings, and so on, which we later use to train our algorithms, right? So that they can think like humans. And then also we use them to validate, right? For a long time, for up to L2 systems, let's say, it's enough if we could collect 100,000 kilometers of real world recordings and use it for training and validation. But when we talk about L4, L5, we have to really talk about 1 million kilometers of recordings of all type of scenarios, right? It's impossible to do this kind of data collection. This is where virtual data is becoming extremely popular, using game engines and so on. As well, to store so much amount of data, it's also necessary that the industry is moving towards cloud. It is said that a fully autonomous vehicle someday in the future will be pumping almost 4 petabytes of data every day, right? To put it in a context, we have been in this industry for quite some time, 20 to 25 years now. If you collate and summate, I think it will come to around 50, 60 petabytes of data, right? Now we are talking about 4 petabytes of data every day. So how do we manage this? Moving towards cloud, working with the cloud providers, service providers, and driving this technology is the only way forward. The fourth dimension around technology enabler is on the computational power. If you pick up any L3 vehicle, L3 enabled vehicles, or even L4 and L5, the performance of those high-end computers would be much higher than our own personal computers, or in home or office, right? This is also the area where the SoC companies like NVIDIA and Qualcomm, and even our partnership with Umbrella is taking good shape. There is a lot of need for computational power because we are trying to build human brain, something like human brain in the car, right? There are also other technology enablers. We will not spend much time, primarily around V2X, which is vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure. Some of the scenarios which a self-driving car has to manage can be only possible if it can talk to infrastructure or to other vehicles, right? A lot of research is going on here. Similarly, a lot of research is going on in creating high definition maps, both in feeding it and consuming it, right, in real time. Similarly, a lot of research around GPS, extremely essential for some use cases around autonomous mobility. And the last one is something called as comprehensive environment model, which is primarily like making a perception. You look at through sensors, you look around the world, you make multiple objects, you detect them, but you have to piece them together and make an impression of your surroundings. So this is primarily called environment modeling. A lot of research is also going on here. With that, I come to the end. I will show one video and then I stop. This video is also relevant because when we see autonomous driving, we always see self-driving cars as the end game, and we say it's so complex. But if you take a path of L1, L2, L3, L4, and so on, and if you start addressing the functions or the mandates there and features, if you start introducing, in due time, you will have an L4. So here you already saw how valet parking is working, right? This is primarily part of an L4 system already. And you also see how humans can interact in their own personal vehicle with the automated system. Right? Here the driver now chooses that, okay, they will enable cruising chauffeur. Now you will again note that system is warning the user. Also it is checking the other lanes and asking the driver either he takes control or it can do on its own. Now again, the driver enables select valet parking. I think with that, I stop now with the message. Again, I'm repeating here. Moving from L1 to L5 systems is a natural progression, as we see. And safety is an integral element of this transition of moving from ADAS systems towards the autonomous mobility systems as well. Right? Thanks again for patient listening.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Rao, for that presentation and giving us a sneak peek into the future, what to expect from ADAS solutions as well as autonomous driving in the future. Since we don't seem to have any questions directed particularly towards the presentation, and since we are also sort of running behind time, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Sergius for the next session, which is a fireside chat between him and Mr. David Ward. So, Mr. Rao, thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Over to you, Sergius.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayank, for that session also earlier. And welcome, David. Thank you for agreeing to join us on this chat.
My pleasure. I'm not sure I haven't got a fireside going here, but, but anyway,
yes. And it's not something we have going here with our hot climate as well.
Great, nice to speak to you again and to join your conclave.
Thanks, thank you, David. And so to all of you tuned in, David Ward is the executive president of the Towards Zero Foundation. And of course, we also know him a lot from the GNCAP, Global NCAP. Global NCAP, as those of you who are familiar with the foundation, has done a lot of work in terms of safety. Their program, Safer Cars for India, has just crossed the 50 cars that were tested. Indian built and Indian sold in India cars. So David, really, first of all, congratulations on all of that effort that you all had put in. Also thank you for being part of the safety movement, which was desperately needed in India.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's been a wonderful journey to be on, and of course we've only been able to do this with some very strong partners in India, particularly the Institute for Road Traffic Education, run by Dr. Rohit Baluja, who's been our kind of key partner throughout. And it's been a fantastic journey and very, very rewarding for us to be involved in, to see the progress from when the first test results now seem a long time ago, in 2014, where all the cars were zero and the initial reaction from some of the manufacturers was pretty hostile, and then the complete transformation, really in multiple dimensions. I mean, much more constructive engagement with individual manufacturers. So now you get major brands, Indian brands, competing for 5-star cars. Tremendous progress from the Indian government on the regulatory side. I really want to highlight the achievements of Nitin Gadkari and Morth in what they've done there. So I think there's a lot of progress really been achieved, and certainly our experience looking around the world is India gets the sort of most improved badge of honor over the last decade, and with more to come.
Okay, yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. I think rapid progress. So yes, most. Yeah.
So I'm just going to close the door because I've got a dog barking in the background.
Oh, we couldn't pick that up, but yes, thank you for that.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. So, right. So David, yes, as you said, it seems like a long time ago that we had the first test, and also the protocol. As time has evolved, you all have evolved the protocol. Earlier it was front test, and I think now if you look at it today, it's gone beyond that. We have more impact tests, and there's also addition of active safety like ESC and seatbelt reminders. So that's the past. David, from here, where do you see it going forward? Do you see it going forward in the first place in India, and where do you think and how fast should we evolve in terms of the protocol?
Well, of course, I mean, every NCAP, almost around the world, every single NCAP moves with the times and upgrades. Approximately roughly every 5 years or so, you see NCAPs around the world adding in new tests and maybe making them a bit stronger. This is an important part of the NCAP dynamic in any market, because they always need to be ahead of regulation, and they also need to be encouraging the manufacturers that can do the best to demonstrate what they can do. I always think when you have an NCAP program where every single vehicle is 5-star, it's sort of not fulfilling its purpose. Its purpose is to be, it's like a road safety Olympics. Gold medals are supposed to be really highly prized. If they become everybody's got one, then you're not proving very much. So it's a natural thing for NCAPs to move with the technology, move with the times like that. And we've done that from our early tests, which were just front impact, back in the first round of testing. In terms of the future, to be honest, I think we're really expecting this now to transfer to Bharat NCAP. So the question about the future evolution is really a question for what we hope, and we're very excited to see the development of Bharat NCAP. And then I think hopefully it will join all the family of NCAPs around the world. And then the next iteration, the next development will be something that Bharat NCAP can consider. So I think that's probably the fairest answer I can give.
Right. No, thanks, David. So, as you said, yes, the transition would be to Bharat NCAP. And now when this transition happens, David, from your experience, what would be your advice for the Bharat NCAP? Because, adding safety systems, like you said, yes, it is an Olympics, it's a moving target, but it also does add costs. And in a cost-sensitive market like India, where you want people to move into cars, let's say, and families away from, as you've seen, and it's in a way cliched, but it's in a way also true. Families of 4 sitting on motorbikes. So you want people to move into automobiles, 4-wheelers also from a safety point of view. What is your advice in terms of balancing costs versus safety? Should we look at more active or passive, or are there any particular technologies that have a higher, reward ratio?
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. This cost affordability dynamic, and also what is happening to the unit costs of technology. And that isn't just a discussion for NCAPs, it's also a discussion about regulations. And the way we like to see it is that the regulations are the minimum level playing field that sort of sets the bottom end of what the market can allow. And then NCAPs are to stretch that above and beyond, which is sort of what I was saying before, is that you don't, a 5-star NCAP is not a regulatory requirement. It's an aspiration for a manufacturer to be able to show that they're really able to do a lot, and to influence consumers to think about the option, the choices they face. So I suppose the first part of that question is that what's the regulatory story? And I would say that the regulatory story has been one of great progress, where the government has introduced, all the basic front side crash test standards. They've acted on pedestrian protection. Very important is we're about to see, and it's been a little bit delayed, electronic stability control being mandated for, I think, new models this October, and then all cars in production, I think, from 2024. To be honest, I would have preferred that a bit earlier. But nevertheless, it's what we want to see, and it's continuing progress, which is what really is the hallmark of what India has been doing. And there are still other significant, G20 vehicle producers that are not there yet. So this is very good, and ESC is still a technology that can deliver pretty significant benefits. There was a study done by Bosch a few years ago that estimated that it would help impact on something like 33,000 crashes potentially, and could save about 9,000 deaths, 14,000 injuries per year once it's spread through the vehicle fleet. So that gives you a sense of the benefits of a technology like ESC. And on the cost side of that, I would say that's really pretty negligible. And the advantage of a universal regulation, particularly in a global context where now I think nearly around the world, something like 80% of all new passenger vehicles have ESC, then the economies of scale, the unit costs are so low that the costs are not really a big issue. And so I'm really pleased to see that moving on. And of course, in our protocol, we included ESC in the upgrade. We included ESC as a standard feature for the best-selling variants in the first instance. And so that's, I think, the next big step forward. I would like to see it extended to commercial vehicles. ESC works perfectly well in trucks, buses, and so on. And so from a regulatory point of view, that would be a good thing. When it comes to what Bharat NCAP can do, as I was saying, it can afford to be more adventurous because it's not a regulatory standard. So looking at things like autonomous emergency braking and so on would be, I think, a sensible thing to look at. And you can do it. You can be quite flexible with NCAPs. In the US, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has a category called top pick, which sits above their normal rating. So you know how they design the future evolution of Bharat NCAP can point a spotlight on one or two different technologies and give extra benefits. It's all about engaging with the public and through the media in an awareness raising of what technologies can do. And so I think that's the beauty of the combination of a timely regulation and then quite a dynamic NCAP. And I think all of the points you're raising need to be seen in that way. It's a combination. And of course, we've got also, I think in October, there's the new 6 airbag requirement coming in. So that again is on the regulatory side, which is interesting. That will overtake an element of our new protocol. We have a curtain airbag requirement in the new protocol, but actually the regulation will make that redundant. And that shows you how it's a kind of push me, pull you process between regulation and what NCAPs can do.
Right, David. So yeah, that's an interesting point. The 6 airbag rule and like you said, surpassing a certain protocol point. In the protocol also, David, like you said, ESC, from what I understood, what you just shared is that it's got a very good cost to reward kind of ratio. What about AEB, auto emergency braking, which is a part of the ADAS suite? Do you see that as, let's say, the next after ABS, ESC, could it be AEB? That's the next step?
For sure. And of course, there are different variants of it. There's a sort of at least 3. There's a sort of city low speed AEB, and then interurban and pedestrian versions. So I think a step-by-step evolution of use of AEB is the next obvious ADAS technology to look at. I would also add to that intelligent speed assistance, because that's becoming mandatory in Europe for all new models from next year, next July, and it's already mandatory for new models from last July. And ISA system, you already have a speed limiter kind of device, I know, as part but ISA is a bit more comprehensive than that. And I think that given the critical issue of speed in road safety and trying in any crash situation, if you have less speed, you have less kinetic energy to deal with, and so the injury risk is reduced. So there's always an advantage to having vehicles respecting the speed limits. And I think that it's challenging because it requires interaction between the vehicle and the road architecture, the speed limit signs and so on, where it's using cameras, but also digital maps. You have some systems, and even retrofit systems available, which are primarily using digital maps. And if they're accurate, then they will help. And I think for instance, for commercial fleets, ISA systems make a lot of sense because they avoid the risk of, or they reduce the risk of crashes, they reduce the risk of speeding tickets and so on. They save fuel. They have a lot of business case arguments in favor. So I would say AEB and ISA are the next things. And although I'm following on from the very interesting presentation from a colleague from Continental, but I have to say, much as I love all the ideas of autonomous vehicles, I am very, very skeptical about timescales. I think let's concentrate on what I would call the low-hanging fruit of ADAS. Where there's still decades of progress to be achieved at that level before we ever contemplate full autonomy. And much as, again, it's all very impressive. I was looking at the video that was shown at the end. That street scene was about as far away from a typical Indian, even actually a typical UK street scene, as you're likely to see. And I just think that the challenges in the road environment for more advanced systems towards autonomy are really great. So my priority would be on the systems that we know are effective and work, and the evidence is clear already. And the cost issues are also more realistic and manageable.
That's an interesting point. So in a way, I get what you're saying. The utopian dream is I guess, well, utopian for now, and so concentrate on the low-hanging fruit. And speaking of which, David, the low-hanging fruit being, let's say, elements of ADAS like AEB and the ISER. Do you think that these would even supersede, let's say, the 6 airbag rule? Because I want your opinion here, because there's a lot of dialogue and divisive dialogue maybe on the 6 airbag rule between brands in India. Because on one hand, you have brands who advocate and say, yes, it's needed. On the other hand, there are brands who say, well, no, why do you need it on all cars, on certain small cars, city-based vehicles, and it's going to push the price up beyond. So should we, in terms of hierarchy, get electronic systems in before, let's say, something like a 6 airbag? Electronic systems like AEB, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting discussion. I mean, I say I'm very supportive of the initiatives of Morph and the leadership shown by Nitin Gadkari. So I don't want to give any impression that I'm critical of what the trajectory they've gone. But I must admit, if I was starting from this perspective, I'd have a slightly different view about how you go forward. I'm a bit purist about this. I would prefer performance requirements than technology specifications. And when you specify given technologies, there is a risk. I mean, one day someone will come up maybe with a better idea than the airbag. And then you suddenly, oh my goodness, we've got to change all our regulations, stop all that talk about airbags, and whatever is the new thing, change it to that. Which is why injury criteria measured on a dummy is kind of the way, I think, always to base the test. And then you leave it up to the engineers. You say, these are the test requirements, and these are the injury criteria you've got to, as a minimum in a regulatory sense, you must ensure that the injury levels don't exceed whatever criteria you set. And then you leave it to the engineers to solve the problem. And I kind of prefer that. In principle, that's, I think, the purest way to go for regulation. I also think, going back to the role of NCAPs, I think NCAPs can be that much more stringent that they can drive performance up and influence consumer choice. So I think probably my view about this is use regulations to set minimum performance requirements, and then use NCAP to drive performance even better into the sort of what I would call the Olympic gold medal class. But having said all of that, I don't want to sort of criticize the airbag rule. I think it's a good challenge, and again without sounding too negative, there's in the direction of the industry. I mean, I remember back in 2014, there were certain manufacturers who just said, oh, in India, there's no need for airbags. I mean, I had literally people saying to me from major manufacturers, in fact, the market leader in India, saying, Indians will not want to buy airbags. They're the most competitive consumers in the world. They just won't buy them. And I said, well, it might be a good idea if you explain to them what they were, and actually, I think the effect of the Safer Cars for India project has been to completely disprove the thesis that safety doesn't sell, or that Indian consumers aren't interested in airbags. What we've seen over the last, the period since nearly 10 years now, is that actually safety for sure sells in India. And the extremely high awareness of Indian consumers, both for cost but also for safety, is absolutely clear. And so I think that's why the arguments against the 6 airbag rule remind me a little bit of that, well, let's not have any at all arguments back in 2013, 14.
Right. Got it, David. So yeah, I mean, it's not for your criticism on the rule, but I was looking more for your, in terms of hierarchy or order of preference. Would you put AEB? What would your advice be for?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question, because it's the balance between also occupant protection and crash avoidance, where you're probably benefiting more than just the vehicle occupants. And so I think there's always a sense that because of the progress that there's been in occupant protection, which has been pretty substantial with the front side impact and so on, it is a good thing, definitely, to prioritize ADAS technologies like ESC, for instance, because skidding off the road crashes can very often involve other vulnerable road users, cyclists, pedestrians, and so on. And so I think it's definitely right that all the time you have to have a good balance between concern for the vehicle occupant and then the other road users. And given the balance of risk on Indian roads, and again, I have to pray, Bosch has been coming out with really great studies recently. They just came out with one on pedestrian risk in India, which is pretty stunning. And they're showing there's 68,000 pedestrian deaths, 16.5% of the total. And of course, that means it's we can't only be concerned with vehicle occupants. The balance is wrong. Just as we've got to be very concerned about two-wheeler issues, and there is action in relation to two-wheelers, which also needs to be addressed. And I hope I can envisage Bharat NCAP maybe developing a two-wheeler program. In Malaysia, the ASEAN NCAP has its own two-wheeler. There's a motorcycle. It's called MyVAP, I think, motorcycle rating thing, and there are technologies and initiatives there. And one, for example, which I think could be very good to look at, is India has already mandated anti-lock brakes for motorcycles, but only for bikes above 125cc. And it would be better to have that requirement for smaller machines, and probably maybe instead of talking about CCs, talk about speed. So you could say that, for example, ABS for anything that can do more than say 50 kilometers an hour. And there are relatively low-cost solutions. So an effective ABS system for smaller bikes only works on the front wheel. So it's like half, very crudely, half, single channel. And that's an affordable but effective technology, which is very important to improve the safety of two-wheelers. And I think it would be really good to see Bharat NCAP being dynamic in this area too. I mean, another area there is, sorry, I'm running a bit across the the issues, but the increasing prevalence of electromobility, of electric two-wheelers, which is going to be very important for climate change, air quality considerations, and all the rest of it. The growth, I think India could will become, I think, a world leader in e-bikes, two-wheelers. And one of the issues there is maybe about speed control, speed limiters on such machines, plus maybe ABS. You could be pioneering the safety envelope of those kind of machines, which is a big part of the crash profile that India experiences.
Right. No, absolutely, David. Thanks for sharing all that. And we also have to look at the time, because I know we've got about half an hour on there, and we have a few questions actually from our audience, and I would like to toss them over to you. One question we have from Rohan is, since GNCAP crash test cars sold in India, does it plan to use the in-depth Indian data for designing future test protocols? So,
That's an interesting question. I mean, we also work with other NCAPs through Global NCAP is sort of platform collaboration from, with ASEAN NCAP, particularly in emerging markets, so Latin NCAP, and all the protocol developments share in their experiences. And for instance, on ASEAN NCAP does one or two very unique things. They have a blind spot rating, which is basically encouraging manufacturers to have better rear view mirrors to eliminate blind spots precisely for motorcycles that come up behind passenger cars and can't be seen. And that's a very, because in the ASEAN region, actually like in India, you have a very large amount of two-wheelers interacting with cars. That's a specific evolution for that market. And we like to see that, and that could be extended. Actually, that's also something that Bharat NCAP could perhaps pick up on. And part of what Global NCAP's fundamental purpose is to encourage the different NCAPs to discuss their protocol evolution. Some manufacturers sort of say, "Oh, can't you just have one global test?" And they say to me, "It'd be great. Why just Global NCAP do one test for everybody, and that's fine." And I say, "Well, that isn't really the point. What we want is to build on the experiences in individual marketplaces, bottom up. What is true is that they tend to sort of over time converge, but not necessarily at exactly the same pace." And so I think that's how we see it.
And David, like you said, converge. Just a question: do you think, or when do you think the Indian NCAP would converge with the Euro NCAP, which, from what we read at least, is the most stringent compared to the American standard or other?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Euro NCAP is now definitely the most advanced in the world. And I mean, they really. I was involved in the creation of Euro NCAP back in it seems a long time ago, 1996, 97, and when Euro NCAP started, a bit like Safer Cars for India in 2014, it was just a front impact test. It was really, really simple. Now they're doing bicycle protection and all sorts of things, and they're doing also very interesting vehicle compatibility, which is basically examining the impact of heavier vehicles into smaller vehicles. I mean, it's very, very advanced. I mean, I think it would be kind of presumptuous for Bharat NCAP, as it's getting going, to set some kind of timetable when you would catch up with Euro NCAP, because so much depends on the status of the marketplace that they're operating in. And actually, it's very interesting. A rather instructive story is in the US. For unfortunate reasons, the US NCAP has not been upgraded for over 10 years. And part of that was because the Obama administration was a bit slow to upgrade. They made a proposal to upgrade in 2015. Then, unfortunately, Donald Trump got in, and he just froze everything. No regulations, nothing. Even though US NCAP isn't a federal regulatory standard, they still froze it. And so the result is that US NCAP has been standing still for 10 years. And last year I went with Euro NCAP, various others, and we went and made presentations to NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They showed us how they were going to catch up. And what was quite salutary experience for them was that then the main research director from Euro NCAP presented the next stage of Euro NCAP. And you could see the faces of these American officials were just like, oh, because they sort of thought, now we're catching up. But actually what they were being told is, yeah, but you're catching up to what we're about to jump ahead from. And so it's a constant sort of game of catch up. And actually from the US perspective, it's rather sad. I mean, the US for decades was the world leader in vehicle safety, and regrettably they're not now. Although I have to say the Biden administration is definitely trying to catch up.
Back on track.
So, but I think what that story tells you is how the really important thing is having a dynamic evolution, not saying, right, we've done it, we're going to stick for 10 years, but to keep it under evolution. And it's the direction of travel that you should be concerned about, not necessarily, are we this much behind Euro NCAP or whatever, and adapting to your own conditions for sure. Like in NCAP, they have a particular problem with motorcycle fatalities, so they adapted to this blind spot issue, which is probably less of a concern than it would be in Europe.
Right. No, thank you, David, so much. I think we are very close, or we've gone past our time, but I will take one. No. I think we've extended that as well. So thank you for sharing. But I think one last question from the audience, and maybe you could just shed some light. Is the question is should Bharat NCAP be government controlled or independent? And so perhaps you could just shed some light on NCAPs and how they run.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one answer to that. Euro NCAP, for instance, is a public-private partnership. There are a number of governments across Europe that are involved: the UK, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Sweden, and so on, together with consumer organizations and others. And so that's the mixed model. It is legally, it's a non-profit organization with these stakeholders involved. Others are pure government, like in the US, the US NCAP is run by NHTSA. Another that they have in the US, the Insurance Institute, is owned by insurance companies. Japan NCAP is basically a government one. There's no real perfect blueprint. I tend to think that the Euro NCAP model of having both government and consumer type independent bodies is very, very important. The most important thing of all is the integrity of the test process and making sure that it's trusted by the public. That's kind of the bottom line. If people suspect that an NCAP is coming under too much influence of manufacturers, it will not work properly. So in a way, the most important thing is to concentrate on the trust factor and the integrity of the testing, and making sure that it's fair between all manufacturers and that there are sort of proper procedures if anybody thinks something went wrong, and tests can be repeated and so on. It's those kind of protocols that really matter. But if I was choosing, I would definitely go down the Euro NCAP model.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Thank you for the time. Thank you for extending the time also and being with us, beyond what we asked you for.
Thanks so much. Very well timed, because it's UN Road Safety Week on the theme of rethinking mobility. So I know my friends in the United Nations are very delighted that these sort of events are happening this week. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you to all the audience for joining us. Don't forget, we are on tomorrow as well, where we will be discussing more nuanced elements on preventing accidents and increasing road safety from the Indian context. So join us tomorrow at the same place. So see you then. And thank you again, David.
Yep.